Hello, and thank you for joining me. Today, we're returning to Fallout 76, where we're going to spend another 1,000 scrip with the Purveyor on 3-star ranged legendary weapons, and as always, I'll take a few moments to talk about each weapon, about what makes each one good, bad, or indifferent. And remember, if you enjoy content like this, please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps the channel out, and it doesn't cost you anything. Alright, let's go on ahead and get started here. So for our first 3-star ranged legendary weapon today, we get an Assassin's Short Pump Action Shotgun with bashing damage increased by 50% and breaking 50% slower. So the Assassin's is one of the Slayer's effects, and if you're into PvP, it's going to be one of the very most important legendary effects for you. If you're not into PvP, then it's probably not going to be all that useful for you. The NPC humans in the game are pretty squishy, so getting an extra 50% damage against them is not generally necessary with most weapons to be able to bring them down quickly. In PvP, a lot of players are running Assassin's Armor, so at least that's what I understand. I'm not really a PvP expert, but that's my understanding. And so to be able to cut through the damage, the protection that provides, you really need some extra damage. So this could be good in that situation. Unfortunately, the second effect, the bashing damage increased by 50%, is really kind of a lost effect. On a minigun where you can put a shredder mod, the bashing damage increased by 50% effect is very good. But in pretty much every other situation, the amount of damage that it adds to your bashing, which is already very low, is just so little that it just doesn't do much for you. So it's basically like not having a secondary effect there. The breaking 50% slower, that's always a good effect because who likes repairing their gear? So having that on your weapon, allowing you to fire it basically twice as long without having to repair it, that's a good thing. I don't think anybody's going to complain about that. It may not be the very best 3rd star, but it's definitely a solid one. But unfortunately, because the 2nd star is worthless and the 1st star is very situational, primarily for PvP, and the pump action shotgun is probably not the weapon you're going to want for PvP, then this weapon is pretty much a dud. So let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we have a Berserkers Crossbow with plus 50% VATS hit chance and breaking 50% slower. So the Berserkers effect, it got a buff recently, well, not that recently at this point, several months back, several patches back at this point, with the legendary effect rebalancing. And the big takeaway for that is that instead of doing less damage than a non-legendary version of the weapon, if you do have armor, then it just doesn't really give you any benefit if you are wearing a significant amount of armor. So that's a big bonus, because at least it could be used in situations where you are wearing armor and not going to be worse than a non-legendary version. Now, the Berserker's effect, because it is so difficult to stay alive with no armor, much more difficult than it is to stay alive at low health, it's kind of a niche weapon, and you really probably need stealth to make it work. The crossbow's a silent weapon, not even suppressed, but silent, so it's a good choice for that. Unfortunately, you do have to reload it after every shot, so it's very slow, so you really need to get some extra damage to be able to make sure you're getting those one-shot kills, because otherwise you could find yourself swarmed, and the crossbow is not going to help you when you're swarmed. The plus 50% VATS hit chance, that's very good on a weapon like this, because trying to get that extra damage by targeting the weak points, that plus 50% VATS hit chance is going to do a lot for you. It's going to make sure that you can get those hits, even at a much greater range than you would normally be able to. Also, it does effectively increase the range of the weapon, because it does help to offset the VATS accuracy penalty for shots made in VATS beyond the range listed on the card. So you will still see some damage drop off once you're firing at targets that are beyond that range, but for most weapons that's 50%, which is significant, but it still at least allows you to be able to get some damage on the target if they're out of your normal range. And then I talked about the breaking 50% slower. It's probably not as good on this weapon, just because you're going to fire so many fewer shots off of a weapon like this versus several other weapons. You know, even a semi-automatic weapon with a decent-sized clip is going to fire a lot more shots. So you're probably not going to be repairing this one normally as much as you would other weapons, but still, breaking 50% slower, never a bad thing. This one's kind of interesting for Berserker builds, so I might consider putting this one up on my vendor, but I don't know that there's really that many people playing Berserkers builds, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. And here we've got an Instigating Gatling Laser with plus 25% damage while aiming and 25% less VATS AP cost. So, first of all, it's important to note that this is the Gatling Laser, not the Ultrasight Gatling Laser, and the damage on the Gatling Laser is lower than the Ultrasight Gatling Laser, which makes this, sadly, a somewhat inferior weapon, just basically an inferior version of the weapon. The Instigating effect, it's no longer doing what it actually says. It says double damage if the target is at full health. It's double the base damage of the weapon, not double the damage that you see on the item card if you have anything at all that's increasing your damage. Even just the Bloody Mess perk will change that. So that's important to keep in mind, but it's still very useful on a heavy hitting weapon because the base damage on a heavy hitting weapon is going to be high, so getting another 100% of that is nothing to complain about. This is not really that weapon. The strength of a Gatling Laser, or better yet, the Ultrasight Gatling Laser, is that it has a very high fire rate and a very high ammo capacity. So it has very good damage over time, but its per shot damage is not particularly high, meaning that the instigating effect is not going to be doing a whole lot for it. Its fire rate is high enough that you will frequently see, because of lag and things like that, situations where more than the first shot do double damage. So, I mean, you can get some utility out of that, but that's not really something you can count on, and I definitely would not recommend trying to count on that. The plus 25% damage while aiming, that's excellent on a weapon like this, because a weapon like this is firing so quickly that no matter how high your AP pool is, you're going to burn through your AP pool very quickly if you're trying to use it in VATS. So most people are going to be either hip firing or aiming down the sights. So if you're the type of player who likes to aim it down the sights, then that's plus 25% damage for free. And then the 25% less VATS AP cost, that is a very good effect, but this isn't really the best weapon for it, just because, like I said before, it fires so quickly. That 182 base fire rate is very high that no matter how much AP you have, and even with the 25% less VATS AP cost, you're just going to burn through your AP pool very, very quickly. So I think the third effect is kind of lost on this one. The first effect's kind of lost. The second effect is good, but overall, this one's a dud. Let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got another crossbow, this time Zealots, with replenishing action points with each kill, and your VATS critical meter filling 15% faster. So everything I said about the crossbow itself before stands, and the plus 50% damage to Scorch, the Zealot's effect, that is potentially one of the more useful of the Slayer's effects, just because it does affect Scorch Beast Queen, or Scorch Beasts, as well as the Scorch Beast Queen. So you could definitely take a weapon with the Zealot's effect to a Scorch Beast Queen fight and do alright with it. This is probably not the weapon you want to be doing that with, though. The sustained DPS damage on a crossbow is going to be relatively low just because you do have to reload it between every shot. So you're going to be firing very, very slowly because of that. Yes, it could have some pretty high damage per shot, but I don't think it's going to make up for the damage per second that you could get from a much higher fire rate weapon. So overall, the first effect's kind of lost here. Replenishing action points with each kill, I also think that one's a bit lost on this weapon as well, because you have to reload it between each shot. The way I would use it would be to go into VATS, fire, and if my target survived, I would drop back out of VATS while I'm reloading the weapon. Partly just because that makes it easier to move around and stay in stealth and things like that, but partly just to conserve AP, and I'm used to doing that because my primary build is a commando build. So with that in mind, I'm probably never going to run out of AP while using a weapon like a crossbow because of how slowly it fires. So replenishing action points with each kill, while it can be a very good effect, I don't think you're going to get a whole lot out of it on this particular weapon. And then the VATS critical meter filling faster, that is going to be very good on this weapon because it's going to make it to where even high health builds could get more critical hits and therefore have a much higher chance of getting those one-shot kills when they need them on tougher enemies. So overall, that's a very good effect on this weapon, but overall, the first two effects, not exciting, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And here we got an Instigating Submachine Gun with plus 25% damage while aiming and 90% reduced weight. So the Instigating effect, again, is not double damage, it's double the base damage of the weapon. And the Submachine Gun's base damage is not particularly high, so you are not going to be getting a whole lot out of it. Its fire rate is the standard fire rate for commando-type weapons, automatic rifles, they're 75, which is a pretty solid fire rate, but definitely solid enough that you will sometimes see the lag effect where the instigating effect triggers on more than the first shot, but once again, I don't recommend banking on that. The plus 25% damage while aiming, if you choose to aim this weapon, then that's going to be very good, just like it was on the Gatling Laser, because basically it's just 25% free damage if you're aiming down the sights. And if you're the type of player who likes to aim down the sights, then it's just free damage. Myself, I'm more of a VATS player, and I would use this weapon in VATS, but that's certainly not the only way to do it. It's perfectly valid to aim it down the sight or hip fire it. So for players who would prefer to do that, that's a good effect. And then the 90% reduced weight. On a weapon like this, I think it's a bit lost just because look at the list of options for current mods in the right-hand window there, and you see that you can certainly put a lot of different mods on there, and each one of those mods is going to increase the weight of the weapon and not benefit from the 90% reduced weight. Furthermore, if you look at the weight of the weapon itself, 4.9 in the bottom left-hand corner, I don't think this weapon weighs 49 pounds. So I don't think you're really getting the full effect out of the reduced weight anyway. So it's definitely not the best effect for this weapon, but anything that reduces weight I guess is not bad. Let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we have an anti-armor auto grenade launcher with plus 25% damage while aiming and plus 1 agility. So the anti-armor effect is one of the strongest effects in the game. Because of the way it works, you can sort of think of it as still being multiplicative, while almost all of the other effects are now additive. So that's a big thing. The big drawback to anti-armor is that if your opponent is already pretty squishy, as in they don't have a whole lot of armor to protect them, it's not really going to do a whole lot for you. But I don't see that as a huge drawback, simply because if they're already squishy, then they're going to go down pretty quickly. So you don't necessarily need a legendary effect to help you take them down in that situation. The plus 25% damage while aiming, well, I'm not going to beat that effect to death. This is the third time we've seen it. But it is good on this weapon, notably because if you use VATS on a grenade launcher or other launcher-type weapons, then if you miss, your explosive just kind of goes off into nothingness. Whereas if you free aim it, either hip fire or aim down the sights, then if you miss, you at least still get your explosion somewhere. So there's something to be said for that, and the plus 25% damage while you're aiming, that's a good thing. The plus 1 agility, it's not a bad thing by any means, but I don't think it's at its best on this weapon, just because the primary benefit for plus 1 agility is better stealth and more VATS AP. Now, with the second star, you're probably not going to be trying to use a weapon like this in VATS, ideally. If you are, you'd be better off with a different second star. And you're definitely not going to be stealthy while you're using an auto grenade launcher. So, while it's not bad, it's just not doing a whole lot for you. But overall, this is a pretty solid weapon, at least enough to where you could, run around and kill some things with your 40mm grenades instead of dropping them. So, let's go ahead and move on to the next one here. And this time we get an Assassin Short Assault Rifle with the last round in the magazine having a 25% chance to deal double damage, and your VATS critical meter filling 15% faster. So I talked about the Assassin's effect before. Pretty much everything there still applies. The Assault Rifle is a little bit low on per shot damage compared to other commando weapons, so it could make it a little bit more useful if you're fighting humans. But then again, if you're using an assault rifle for your farming, then you're probably going to want something that's going to give you more damage against something a little tougher than humans. So again, unless you're taking this into a PvP fight where maybe you've set up some rules for the world or something like that, where only assault rifles or only certain types of weapons are allowed, then chances are this is probably not the weapon you're going to be using in PvP either. The last round in a magazine having 25% chance to deal double damage, in my opinion, that's basically not having a second effect at all. The chance for that to happen is just way, way too low. The base clip on the automatic version of this weapon is 20 rounds. So you would have to fire all 20 rounds before you would have a 25% chance for this to trigger. That means that roughly 1 out of 80 shots, if you emptied your clip every time, would get that effect. Definitely not worth it. Not worth it at all. The advanced critical meter filling 15% faster, that's a good one, and this is the type of weapon that's going to benefit from, because the commando weapons work very, very well in VATS. So getting some extra damage by having your critical meter filling faster and getting some extra crits, that could definitely help an assault rifle keep up with the handmade and the fixer a little bit better. So overall, that's a very good effect, but probably the only good one on this weapon. So overall, pretty much a dud. Let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. Ooh, now this one is a good, well, not as good as I thought. I got a little excited. This is the Gatling Laser instead of the Ultrasight Gatling Laser. The effects on this weapon are very good, but unfortunately it is an inferior version of the weapon. The bloodied effect is definitely the highest damage effect in the game. You do have to sacrifice a significant portion of your health bar, but there are a lot of ways you can supplement to stay alive, and they're very effective. That's why you see so many players running around with low health and using bloodied weapons. The plus 25% damage while aiming, well, it's just as good here as it was on the last Gatling Laser that we saw it on. Actually, probably better here because the first star is much better. The breaking 50% slower, that's going to be very good on a weapon like this, just because you're going to be putting so many shots through it that it is going to break down relatively quickly compared to some other weapons. So having to only repair it, half as often, that will be a benefit. If this was an Ultrasight Gatling Laser, then this would be not a god roll, but a very good roll. Because it's a Gatling Laser, it's significantly worse, unfortunately. So we got 2 more rolls here. Let's go on ahead and see what we get. And here we've got an Assassin's Black Powder Pistol with plus 50% damage to humans, well, that's the Assassin's effect, and plus 50% limb damage and 25% less VATS AP cost. So we've seen lots of Assassin's weapons here, and this is probably another one that you are not going to want to use in PvP. So that really eliminates the benefit of the Assassin's weapon on this weapon, or I'm sorry, the Assassin's effect on this weapon, simply because this weapon is going to hit hard enough that if you get a good solid hit, you should kill most humans in the game with 1 shot. So, and that's for the non-legendary version of a black powder pistol. So, unless you are for some reason trying to roll this thing in PvP, the first effect is completely lost. The plus 50% limb damage, well, that is not one of my favorite effects. It does have some utility because crippling your enemies can help keep you alive, but this is the type of weapon that you really want to get those 1-shot kills on. And increasing the limb damage that you do does not help you do that. So it's really not doing a whole lot for you there. Also, the limb damage, additional limb damage effect, it's much better on a faster firing weapon because those weapons tend to have lower damage, and so you'll need to put more shots on the target, which means that you have more shots to get, or more chances to benefit from that limb damage. So overall, basically a lost effect on this weapon. The 25% less VATS AP cost, kind of like the crossbow, because this weapon has to be reloaded after every shot, I just don't think you're going to get much benefit from the less VATS AP cost either, as long as you're dropping out of VATS to reload. So, all in all, this one is pretty much a complete dud. Let's go for the last one here and see what we get. And here we've got a Hunter's 50 cal machine gun with replenishing action points with each kill and 15% faster reload. So the Hunter's effect is another one of the Slayer's effects, and it's probably one of the least useful effects just because there's not a lot of times when you're going to be going and intentionally hunting animals, you know, Deathclaws and Yaoguais and things like that. Yeah, there are some handful of quests in the game and the occasional daily challenge and things like that, but overall, you don't really need a dedicated weapon for that, and especially not one that weighs as much as a 50 cal machine gun. So, really, that's a terrible first effect for this weapon, I think. The replenishing action points with each kill, this is not the best weapon for a weapon like, or best effect for a weapon like that. Got that backwards, but anyway, simply because the weapon like this is going to fire fast enough that you're going to burn through your AP pretty quickly. Now, this is one of the weapons that you can use in VATS as a heavy weapon user to some effect, because it does have a little bit lower fire rate. So, replenishing action points with each kill could allow you to keep using VATS with it longer, getting some extra damage from targeting the weak points and the VATS critical shots. So, it's not necessarily totally lost on this weapon, but really not the second effect I would want. I'd much prefer either faster fire rate or explosive. The 15% faster reload, that's exactly the effect I want on this weapon. The reload speed on the heavy guns tends to be pretty slow, so anything that speeds those up is good. Admittedly, they don't have to reload all that often, but with the 50 cal, unlike the core weapons, you know, the Gatling Lasers and Gatling Plasmas and such that use either fusion core or plasma cores, the 50 cal, you can reload it between fights without ending up with a whole bunch of half-used cores in your inventory. So there's definitely something to be said for that. So having it reload faster, that's probably more important than those other weapons. So overall, that's probably the best effect on this weapon, making it pretty much a dud. So anyway, didn't get anything exciting this week, but we'll try again next week. I appreciate you tuning in, and I will talk to you then.